Hi, I'm Maya, and today I want to talk about One True Loves and Happily Ever Afters by Elise Bryant. These are companion novels. You don't have to read one to read the other, but it definitely helps because there are characters that appear in both books. So, Happily Ever Afters is about a girl named Tessa who is starting at a new school for the arts and she got accepted into their writing program. She's super excited, but then she gets writer's block and then she gets imposter syndrome and she just feels like she doesn't belong at that school. And her life starts going downhill. But like the title indicates, in the end, everything works out, and she finds the love that she's always been writing about in her stories. And then One True Love centers around Lenore, who is one of Tessa's friends in Happily Ever Afters, and Lenore definitely deserves her own story. She's fashionable, artistic, spunky, and in her book, she's graduating from high school and trying to decide what she wants to do with the rest of her life. She goes on a European vacation and she meets a cute boy, and lots of fun, romantic things start to happen. I would describe both of these books as cupcake books. They're sweet and satisfying and just a treat to read. They're so fun to consume and they look delightful. I love the covers, I love the colors. But I just want to make it clear that just because I call them cupcake books, that doesn't mean that they're all fluff. They have substance to them. There are some heavy moments in both books about family problems and racism and how people treat individuals with disabilities and how people deal with their own mental health issues. And I'm so glad these topics are explored in these books because they're so important. Both books made me laugh, cry, swoon, cheer. They're absolutely wonderful. I especially love Happily Ever Afters because I identify with Tessa so much. Like Tessa, my dad is black, my mom is white, I have a love-hate relationship with my curly hair, I'm a writer, I get anxious, and I'm a romantic. So the whole time I was reading this book, I was like, this is me. I am Tessa. And I also identified with Lenore because as a person of African descent, I do feel like it's my duty to do things that my ancestors wouldn't have been able to. Like Lenore, I felt guilty about what I studied in school. When I was in college, I majored in humanities, and there were many times where I felt like I should have been studying to become a lawyer or a doctor or something more impressive. But like Lenore, I realized that my ancestors want me to be happy, first and foremost, and I don't have to follow a specific path for them to be proud of me. In both books, I loved the relationships that Tessa and Lenore had with their family and their friends. The arguments, the misunderstandings, the laughter, the joy, and the love were all so real. I wish that I'd had both of these books when I was a teenager. I think they really would have helped me to be more confident in myself and my talents, and to be more optimistic about my future. But I'm also really glad I have them now when I'm 23 because I'm still figuring things out. So now I want to talk about some spoilers in both books, so if you don't want anything spoiled, stop watching, but if you don't mind, go ahead and keep watching. So first of all, Sam, Tessa's love interest in Happily Ever Afters, is probably my favorite male character in a rom-com ever. He's so sweet and patient and kind and talented and loyal. I think the reason I like him so much is because he reminds me of my husband. Although my husband definitely has better fashion sense than Sam and he's not as dorky as Sam, but those things still make Sam very endearing. I love Sam's relationship with Tessa's brother Miles, who has disabilities, and I love that Sam doesn't treat Miles any differently than he treats anyone else. I loved all of the cute indicators that Sam had a crush on Tessa. I love that Sam's a baker, and I love how he's so humble about having a mother who is a famous chef. And I loved when Sam stood up for Tessa at the store when the shop owner was being racist. I loved how he handled the situation. I was so proud of him. That was probably my favorite part of the book. I was so mad when Tessa broke Sam's heart. She was being so selfish, but I'm so happy that it all worked out in the end and that they ended up together. So throughout the book, Tessa was really frustrating. She kept making all kinds of mistakes. She wasn't very kind to her childhood best friend, Caroline. She dated that idiot Nico, who was obviously bad news, and she trespassed with him and his friends on Halloween on private property. And she lied to her mother about being selected to read her writing at the school's big fundraising event. That one was especially stupid. When I read that, I was like, how could she think that that would be a good idea? But then I had to take a step back because she is a teenager and she still has some maturing to do. And she does learn and mature a lot as the story progresses, and I found her growth so satisfying to read. I loved watching her decide what kind of friend she wanted to be and what kind of person she wanted to be. I think overall I just loved reading Tessa's story and watching her come into her own as a writer. I'm so glad she got past her writer's block and found her mojo again. It's always so beautiful to watch people express themselves through their talents. And the last page of the book made me tear up. Tessa is reading her writing aloud to her class so she can get their feedback. Earlier, she had invited Sam to come listen to her, but he wasn't there when she started reading. But then the last paragraph says, I scan the faces in the room one more time, but my eyes are drawn like magnets to the basement stairs. A flutter in my chest, a catch in my throat. I see him standing there. So good. I love this book. Okay, so now I want to talk about One True Loves. So I loved Lenore from the very first moment we met her in Happily Ever Afters, when she gave Tessa her scarf so that Tessa could use it to cover the bloodstain from her period. And they were complete strangers at that moment. It shows what a kind and selfless person Lenore is, and I instantly loved her. And I loved her throughout her own book. I loved learning more about her. In Happily Ever After, she was always so loud and vibrant and just the life of the party. So it was interesting to find out in One True Loves that that's actually an act, and Lenore is more of a shy, quiet person by nature. But she acts more vivacious and outgoing because she thinks that's what people expect from her, and she doesn't want to let them down. She's a really kind, considerate person, and I just love her. Of course, she also has her flaws, one of them being that she has really big reactions to things that she probably should have gotten more information about. Like when she sees her romantic interest Alex talking to his ex-girlfriend, and she assumes, based on their body language and a snippet of the conversation that she hears, that they're getting back together. And her reaction is to throw things at Alex. Then later Alex tries to talk to her about it, and she's just really stubborn and refusing to listen. That was very frustrating, but also very understandable given her romantic past. Guys have just been horrible to her. It makes sense that she would assume the worst. But I'm so glad that in the end, Alex was able to break down her walls, and he taught her how to trust. I'm so happy that she opened up to him and fell in love with him. Aside from romance, the other main conflict in the book is the deadline that Lenore's parents give to her. They tell her that by the end of the European vacation, she has to decide what she wants to major in at college, and she has to promise to stick with it. So that's a huge decision. Picking what you want to do for the rest of your life when you're a teenager, and you're definitely not going to be the same person years from now that you are in that moment. Like, couldn't her parents remember how it felt to be 17, 18, and overwhelmed and unsure about the future? Her parents were so hard on her and put so much pressure on her, and she never got a real apology from them. Even after she came clean about wanting to take a gap year, they got mad at her, and then they yelled and cried and hugged it out. And they eventually agreed that she could have the gap year. But they never gave her a satisfying apology, in my opinion at least. I just think they were so unreasonable in their expectations of her, and that still frustrates me. But I guess that's also realistic for some families. Overall, I'm so glad Lenore got her gap year and her man. She deserves peace and happiness. Both of these books are so amazing. They're funny, they're sad, romantic, exciting, and triumphant. And if I have daughters someday, I definitely want them to read both of these. So if you haven't read these books, give them a read. And if you have, read them again. Thank you so much for watching.